This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, for Chanukah, welcome everyone. We're going to speak about a very interesting inyan relevant to Hanukkah today. A very unusual subject in L'Kavod, the Yom Tov that we're experiencing now, L'Kavod Hanukkah, Tavshin Pei. We know that Chazal give a very specific time frame as when you should light the menorah. That you light it mishachashecha, from Shkias Hachama, ad shetichla regel menashak, until the foot has been banished and has been vanished from the marketplace. Basically, when everybody goes home. So you basically have what Chazal say, what the poskim say, about 30 minutes from mishachashecha, from Shkias Hachama, until people stop walking in the marketplace. So the Gemara wants to know, how long of a period is that? How do we define? What's the barometer? How do we know when nobody's in the shuk anymore? So we would have said, I don't know, open up your window, take out your binoculars, see if anybody's walking outside, and you see nobody's walking outside, so you can't light anymore. But the Gemara gives a very specific delineation. The Gemara says, Viad Kama. Now pay very careful attention to the words. Who the Baal HaMemra is. Amar Rabba Bar Chana. Rabba Bar Chana said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Now it's very important to remember that the Baal HaMemra here, the Amoira who's saying this halach, is Rabba Bar Chana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Ad Dekalya Rigla the Tarmudai. Until the Tarmudaim are no longer walking in the street. Meaning there's a time in the night that the Tarmudaim are walking behind in the marketplace, and basically, how do you know they're Tarmudai? You see, they wear a name tag. I'm a Tarmudai. They wear hats. I'm a Tarmudai. Like in the Siyam Hashas, they're giving out scarves. Masmidei Asiyam. So they had Tarmudai name pins. Hi, my name is Yankel, the Tarmudai. And so long as the Tarmudim are walking in the marketplace, so then the halacha is that you're allowed to light the menorah. Once the Tarmudim are no longer no longer walking in the street, you cannot light the menorah anymore. So the whole hilchos hadlakas hamenorah is dependent on the Tarmudim. If the Tarmudim are in the street, you can light the menorah. Tarmudim are not in the street, you can't light the menorah. So the $1 million question is, who in the world are the Tarmudim? I never heard of them. They're not Babylonians, they're not Medes, they're not Persians, they're not Greeks, they're not Romans. Who are these Tarmudim? Says Rashi, not Tarnugah, not to be confused with Tarnagoyim. Okay, Tarmudim. Okay, so Rashi says, who are the Tarmudim? Shem Uma, a nationality. Now, if Rashi says they're national, obviously they're not Jewish. Because by definition, if they're Shemuma, they're not Jewish. Malakte eitzim dakim, they gather little twigs. Umisakfim b'shuk, and they hang around in the market ad sheholcha b'nei hashuk l'bateim, until everyone goes home. In other words, they're the last guy standing in the marketplace. All the Yiddish shoppers, they're buying apples, they're buying pears, they're buying bananas, they're buying paper towels, they're buying shoes, they're buying latkes, they're buying sufganiyot, but then they all go home. It's a separate subject. But then the Tarmudim are the ones who gather the wood. And umevarim bibateim are. People go home. Now, what's the first thing people do when they go home in the nighttime? They make a fire because it's dark and it's cold. So people go home, they unpack their apples, they unpack their bananas, they unpack their pears, their sufganiyot, and they need light. So they go to the chest where they store the wood, and they say, I don't have any wood left. So what am I going to do? I need to go buy wood. So luckily the Tarmudim are the last merchants who hang around the marketplace, and when people need wood, they go out to the Tarmudim. They're the last merchants in the street, because the last thing somebody may need to buy is wood. People go shopping for all kinds of sundry items. They go shopping for food, and they get home and they're cold, and they need light, and they need wood, and they realize they don't have wood, and they go to the Tarmudim. They're the ones who gather the wood. So according to Rashi, these Tarmudim were not Jewish people. We don't know where they're from. We don't know much else about them. Comes the Rif, and the Rif argues on Rashi. And the Rif says, who are the Tarmudim? So Rashi, the Rif quotes the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ad Dekalya Rigla Tarmudai Perush, Eitzim Yaduam etzlam v'nikram tarmuda. There's a certain kind of wood. It's called tarmuda wood. You go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, you ask them for tarmuda wood. Now, what do you call a guy who collects tarmuda wood? You call him somebody who needs a new job. No, what do you call him? You call him Bnei Adam Amavi and Oisam Nikram Tarmudai. The Rif says someone who gathers tarmuda wood is called a Tarmudai. So the Rif argues on Rashi. Rashi learns Tarmudam are a Shem Uma. They're a nationality. You know, they're Japanese people, they're North Koreans, and they're Tarmudaim. According to Rif, no. There's no such thing as a nationality Tarmudai. It's a profession. Those who carry, right? Those who work on the docks are called doctors. Those who work in the law are called lawyers. Those who carry Tarmuda wood are called Tarmudaim. Okay. Fine. So the Gra, somewhat uncharacteristically, chimes in on this machlokes Rashi and the Rif. Who's correct, Rashi or the Rif? So we would say, what's the nafkim? Who cares? You know, it's not relevant. In the 5 towns, we're not determining when we light the menorah by looking outside and seeing, are there Talmudim walking the streets? This is an ancient barometer. It's not really relevant anymore. But the Gra quotes the Rif, and then he says the Kesef Mishnah feels that the correct interpretation of Tarmudaim they are a nationality from the land of Tarmudai, and they sit in the shuk later than anybody else. Okay, so why is the Gra even chiming in and trying to offer an opinion which interpretation of Tarmudai is more correct? I would say, simply, it makes a halachic nafkamina. And we're going to sort of divert ourselves for a few moments to discuss a very interesting halachic topic. And that is, we know there's certain mitzvahs in the Torah that we perform them in order to be mefarsem a miracle, parsume nisa. Is there parsume nisa for goyim? When we need to be mefarsim anes, is there any Indian to be mefarsim anes for Gentiles, or is it purely for Jews? For example, reading the Megillah. L'chayra, reading the Megillah is only for Yidden, right? I don't know of any shul that puts out ads on Chves and the New York Times to invite Gentiles to come hear Megillah Esther. As far as I know, there's no Indian of Persume Nisa on Mikra Megillah. But what about Hadlakas Ner Chanukah? Definitely Daled Minim. I don't think there's an Indian of Persume Nisa for Goyim. There are no Goyim at the table. You're not allowed to have a Gentile at a Yom Tov table. It's even a Shaila. Let's say, you have an aide, you have a housekeeper. Could they eat off your table on Yom Tov? But what about what?
Couldn't come into the sukkah.
They couldn't come into the sukkah. Pesach Seder also. They can't, you're not to have a Gentile on Yom Tov because it's Shema Yarba B'Shviloi. But the question is, what about Hadlakas Ner Chanukah? Is there an Indian of lighting the menorah in a way that you're mefarsim the nes for goyim? The nafkamina would be, let's say you live in a Gentile neighborhood and there are no Jews around. So you come home, there's not a chance in the world that a Gentile is going to pass by. For example, let's say you live in Iraq, or you live in North Korea. Now, I don't recommend moving there, but if the housing crunch is getting to you and you want to move to, is there an Indian of lighting the menorah for Gentiles? Or is Parsume Nisa only for Yidden? So very interestingly, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says, someone asked him the Shaila. So I said, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, in the time of the Kra, I have a time of the Kra, it's not in my time of the Kra. It's in the new version of the time of the Kra, and it's probably not in almost 90% of your sheets because I updated the sheets in the last couple of hours. But in number 26, for the 4 of you who have an updated sheet, Reb Chaim Kanievsky was asked the Shaila, is there an Indian of Persume Nisa for Goyim? So he says, L'chayra, it's a machlokes Rashi and the Rif. According to Rashi, that Tarmudaim are merchants who are from the nationality of Tarmuda, and the reason you're allowed to write the menorah until then is because the Tarmudaim are in the marketplace. So there's a raya that there's Parsume Nisa for Goyim, because according to Rashi, the Tarmudai were Gentiles, Gentile merchants. It's Shem Uma. Says Reb Chaim, Rashi is a raya. There's an Indian of Parsume Nisa by Goyim. And he says, well, maybe I'll tell you, it's not a raya. Why isn't it a raya? Because if the Gentile merchants are still in the market, then Jews are going to go outside and purchase from them. No, says Reb Chaim, that's doichek. That's doichek.
They don't see them in Israel.
But they see, and the house is on the side. But according to the Rif, that Tarmudai is not a Shem Uma. It's a profession. Why do you think the Rif argues on Rashi? Why didn't the Rif say Shem Uma? The Rif held that there is no Persume Nisa by Gentiles, there's only Persume Nisa by Yidden. And therefore the Rif translated Tarmudai as the name of a profession, not the name of an Ummah. And according to the Rif, there's no Raya, there's Persume Nisa by Goyim. Now, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says the Medrash in Tehillim, in Parak Mem Daled, this is number 26, or just listen if you don't have it. The Medrash says on the pasuk, "Laman tesaper ba'oznei bincha," says the Medrash, "Litein shavach lamakom shabanav mesaprim kavoidoi bein hagoyim shenemar shiru l'Hashem shir chadash sapru b'goyim." Says Reb Chaim, that's mashma. There's an Inyan Persume Nisa by the goyim. But says Reb Chaim, and I'm surprised he even debates the issue, because the Mishnah Brura paskins open and closed. There is no Parsume Nisa Bagayim.
The Gemara itself says that in a time that there's bayot, you light the nets in the house, inside the house, not outside the house.
Right.
So you see from this Gemara that you don't have Parsume Nisa.
Correct, but the question is, let's say there's no sakana, is it better to light on the outside, because this way you also get the gun? Is it an adif? Is there an enhanced Persume Nisa if you also are mefarsim to Gentiles?
You see from there that Parsume Nisa is for Hashem Beto, it's not for the outside.
That's nowadays. That's because it's sakana. But let's say shaloi b'shasa sakana. Was there an Indian to do it outside to be able to get the Gentiles as well? The Mishnah Brura clearly says no, because the Mishnah Brura paskins that like this. The Mishnah Brura says that he brings a raya that if you live among goyim, since if you live among goyim, you still light the menorah. So too, if everyone in your family is sleeping, you light the menorah. So the place can say, what's the tzushta? What's the raya? If you live among goyim, you light the menorah because you're mefarsim the miracle to the goyim. So Mishnah Brura clearly holds there's no Persume Nisa to goyim. However, Reb Chaim Kanievsky debates this issue. Rebbe Yashiv also wants to bring a raya that from the fact that the Gemara gives the Shiur of Halakha's Ner Chanukah, dependent on when the Talmudim are selling their wood in the marketplace, that seems to indicate that there's an Inyan Parsume Nisa by the Goyim. And the Mayadim Uzmanim, Rav Sternbach brings from his Zayda, Rav Shlomo Zalman Fintz, that also whether there's Parsume Nisa by Goyim is dependent on the Machlokes, Rashi and the Rif. According to Rashi, that Tarmudai are Shem Uma. We have a raya, there's Persume Nisa by Goyim. And according to the Rif, that Tarmudai is the name of a profession, then we don't have a raya, there's Persume Nisa by Goyim. But Rav Nassan Gestetner in Lahiris Nassan, he says it's not a raya b'chlal. It could be, nobody would say there's an Inyan Persume Nisa by Goyim, and the fact that the Tarmudaim are in the marketplace, like what Reb Chaim Kanievsky said is doichek, he says lamaisa, if the Tarmudaim are still in the marketplace, so then people are shopping and are going to be purchasing the wood in the marketplace, and therefore there's Persume Nisa for the prospective buyers. Okay, so be it as it may, that may be a simple reason why the Gra wants to be machriya, which pshat is correct, Rashi or the Rif, because it makes an afkamina lahalacha. According to Rashi, maybe there's basis, there's Persume Nisa by Goyim, and according to the Rif, there's no basis. But let's, yeah.
Then you will be allowed to invite them Pesach night or into the sukkah.
Oh, here's the thing: you still can't invite them because there's a gzeira shema yarba b'shvilai. I mean, you might cook for them. That's the problem. You're allowed to cook on Yom Tov for a Jew. You can't cook for a Gentile on Yom Tov. Okay, but let's investigate this further, because the Maharal wants to know a very simple question. If the Zman Hadlakas Ner Chanukah is dependent on if people are still in the marketplace, why are we being so specific that as long as they're Tarmudaim in the marketplace, you could light the menorah, you could light until Ad Dekalya Rigla de Tarmudai? Why get involved in Tarmudaim? Why mention the profession? Why mention the Ummah? Just say, you could light the menorah if there's anybody walking around. If there's nobody walking around, you can't light the menorah. Why are we being so specific? Why are we singling out the Tarmudaim? Who are the Tarmudaim? And why is the whole mitzvah of Ner Chanukah dependent on these Tarmudaim? So let's investigate historically, who exactly are the Tarmudaim? What country are they in? Where do they come from? What do they represent? And what do they got to do with Hanukkah? In the Mishnah in Nazir, we have a description of a Nazira. A Nazira. What's a Nazira? A woman who's a Nazir. Now, there's a very famous Nazir in this week's Parsha. Anybody know who he is? Yosef. Yosef's the Nazir. How do you know that?
Didn't cut his
What?
He didn't cut his hair.
Oh, how do we know he's a Nazir? So there's a conversation, we said this over, between the Rogatchover and Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, that everywhere in Chumash it says the word Vayigalach, Targum says Vigalach. Whenever it says Vayigalach, he took a haircut, Targum says he took a haircut. There's one exception, this week's Parsha. Vayigalach, Vayichalef, Simloisav, Targum says Vayigalach, Visafar, which indicates like a lower level haircut. So Rabbi Chanan wanted to know, why did Targum deviate from his normal translation of Vigalach? Says the Rogatchover, because Yosef was a Nazir. I never knew this. I honestly never knew. Yosef was a Nazir. How do you know Yosef was a Nazir? It's a pasuk. Ule kadka yid nazir echav. It's pasuk in Chumash. Yosef was a Nazir. I never knew that. So his Nazir, he can't take a haircut. But a Nazir whose hair is getting very long, mekel batar. We had that in the Gemara in Tainus. So therefore the Targum doesn't translate Vigalach, he translates Visapar. Okay, fine. Here we have a Nazira. Definitely not. It's a chiddush. It's a chiddush. Anyway, we have a woman. A woman is a Nazira. Nazira is now to become tameh. So she's bringing her karbanos to end her Nazirus, and she brought one carbon, and now her daughter died before she brought the other carbon. Anyway, the Mishnah in Nazir tells a story about Miriam HaTarmudis. She's from Talmud. And in the Yerushalmi, when the Yerushalmi quotes the story, she's called Miriam HaTadmuris. So different ways of pronouncing it. Either Tarmudis or Tadmuris. Be it as it may, where are they from? What are they all about? What country is this? So, you have to go back to King Solomon. King Solomon had a pact with Hiram, the king of Tyre. We spoke about him a couple months ago. Tyre, Hiram was a great genius in construction. In fact, there's a whole social movement called, help me out, many of the presidents belong to this, the Freemasons. The Freemasons. And the Freemasons are, their Rosh of the Freemasons is Hiram Melech Tzor, because he was an expert in building. He was able to construct towers, architecture, towers suspended in midair. He actually built Batei Mikdashim flying in the air. And we discussed this in the Parsha Tetzaveh from the Ben Ish Chai and others. Hiram Melech Tzor. So Shlomo... What? Yeah. And the question, was he a good guy? Was he a terrible Rasha? Was he the worst person who ever lived? Anyway, then Shlomo made a pact with Parai. And then Shlomo married Paro's daughter. And then Shlomo built many cities. What cities did he build? Vayiven Shlomo es Gezer. He built Gezer. V'es Beis Choron. V'es Baalas. V'es Tamar. He built Tamar. And it's written Taf Memresh, and it's pronounced Tadmar. Fine, Tadmar. That's what it says in Malachim. Now, whatever you have in Malachim, you have in Divrei Hayamim, and there are always discrepancies between the two. So in Divrei Hayamim it says Tadmar. Now, so again, in Malachim it says Tamar, but the Kriya is Tadmar, and in Divrei Hayamim it's spelled Tadmar. Says Rashi, what's going on over here? What is the city of Tadmar? Now, the first thing we have to know is, this city is located in present-day Syria. Okay? By the way, when ISIS came into Syria, the first city they destroyed was Tadmar. They went to the ancient arches, and ISIS destroyed the arches of Tadmar. Now, if you look this up, you're not going to find it on Tadmar. The name of the city is what? What? Palmyra. Palmyra. That's the city in Syria today. It's a region in Syria. And actually, it's somewhat of an oasis in a desert. It was also on the ancient Silk Route. So basically, if you ever were coming from anywhere in the Middle East to attack Israel, you were going to come through Palmyra. So, what? Yeah, that was the picture on the email, exactly. But you can't look at it in the shul because they don't let.
Who doesn't let?
Me, I don't let the phones. Okay. I didn't say it was. So, that's the ancient city of Palmyra. Palmyra is Tadmar or Tadmar. Who built it? It was built by Solomon. So Rashi wants to know what's going on over here. Why does it first say Tamar and then Tadmar? So Rashi quotes the Gemara that we're not Mekabel Gerim from Tadmar. Why not? Then Rashi says that they helped the Jewish enemies. They turned on us. They should have been mischased imanu. They should have done chesed to us. They should have been kind to us. But they flipped on us. They turned on us. And because they turned on us and they rebelled, they're called Tamar. Tamar means to rebel. Tamar means to be nischalef. They became Tamura. They switched on us. Shlomo HaMelech built them a beautiful city. The name of the city was Tadmar. And the reason we call it Tadmar is because Tadmar implies, says Rashi, Ir Chashuva L'Kavod, a wonderful city, a Chashuva city for honor. So Shlomo built these people a city. The city is in Syria. The city is on the Silk Route. They could have helped us. Instead of helping us, they turned on us and they helped the Jewish enemy. Now, when did they help our enemy? We'll have to learn. In a few key times in history, this Ummah, the Tadmoirim, the Tarmudayim, they turned on us. And L'Kavod Shloimai, we don't want to give them the new name. The new name is Tamar. They flipped. So in Malachim, when it's somehow not in the context of Shlomo, even though it is, it says Tamar. But in Divrei Hayamim, L'Kavod Shloimai, we call it Tadmar. More than that, Rashi doesn't say. By the way, this is not even Rashi. Rashi in Divrei Hayamim is not Rashi. But whoever it is, this is what this Rishon quotes for us. That, by the way, how do you know that it's not Rashi? Because it says Rashi. Whenever it says Rashi, it's not Rashi. Whenever it doesn't say Rashi, it is Rashi. But that's a rule for a separate time. Rashi in Divrei Hayamim, Rashi in the Rif, and Rashi in other places may not be Rashi. Here's one of them. Divrei Hayamim is not Rashi. Fine. We go to the Gemara in Yevamos. The Gemara in Yevamos said, Rabbi Yochanan, by the way, remember, the same Rabbi Yochanan, who said that the Zman Hadlakas Ner Chanukah is at the Kalya Rigla de Tarmudai. Rabbi Yochanan says we're not Makabel Gerim from Tarmudah. So the Gemara asks a stira. The Gemara brings a Mishnah that seems to say that we are Makabel Gerim from Tarmudah because they're full-fledged Goyim. Now, why would we not be Makabel Gerim from Tarmudai? Why would we not be Makabel Gerim? So we're going to see there's a very big chashash that they're Jewish. You can convert a Jew. One advantage a guy has over a Jew, there's one thing a guy could do that a Jew can never do. That a guy could convert. You know, that's the advantage. If you want to know what's the advantage of being a Gentile could convert. A Jew cannot convert. Okay? And the problem was these Talmudim, there's a very strong concern that they were Jewish and they were Mamzerim. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan elsewhere seemed to say you cannot convert them because they're Mamzerim, and the Gemara asks a stira, and the Gemara ultimately says there are two Amoram who offer two different viewpoints in Rabbi Yochanan. Some say Rabbi Yochanan held they were Goyim and you could convert them. Some said Rabbi Yochanan held they were Jewish Mamzerim and you can't convert them. The Gemara continues. Why can't you convert Talmudim? What's the chashash? So the Gemara says, Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Savia. One says because of the avodim of Shloimeh. What does it mean, the avodim of Shloimeh? Says the Gemara, Shloimeh had slaves, avodim Kananim. Now an Eved Kanani of Shloimeh was a chashuv a mensch. He was a dignified person. He was a respectable person. He had a high-ranking job. He wasn't just a slave. He didn't just do Shlomo. He was like an official. And if you're an Eved of Shloimeh, so you know, in the shidduch scene, you get the best chayra. So they married, they went to the Beis Yaakovs, they went to the best seminaries. They said, we only want to marry a girl who goes to a seminary that the parents pay more than $35,000. So they said, every parent pays more than $35,000 for seminary. Okay, we're gonna go to a seminary that you can't get into. You can't get into any. So they got the best shidduchim. The only thing was that they were Jewish. So the Avdei Shloimeh married Yiddinas. This man Amar holds that a guy who marries a Jewish girl, the Vlad is a mamzer. Now we don't paskin that way. We hold that if a guy marries a Jewess, the child is Jewish, maybe with some type of stigma, but the child is Jewish. But this man Amar holds a guy that marries a Bas Yisrael, the Vlad is a mamzer. Fine. So the Gemara says, Hanicha, according to the man Amar that they married the Avdei Shloimeh. But what about the other man Amar? The Gemara says, Mibnei Benois Yisrael. So the Gemara asks, what are you talking about, Benois Yisrael? What's that supposed to mean? Listen to this. Amar Rabba Bar Chana. The same Rabba Bar Chana who said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that the Zman Hadlakas Ner Chanukah is at Shetichla Ragla de Tarmudai. It's an amazing thing. The two experts of the Tarmudai and Shas are Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Bar Chana, and that's the Baal HaMemra of when the Zman of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah is. Listen to what he says. That when the Goyim came to destroy Bayis Rishon, they came in with 12,000 soldiers and 6,000 archers. 18,000 soldiers altogether. Or some say 12,000 soldiers, of which there were 6,000 archers. And everybody was going for the booty, everybody was going for the loot, and they, the Tarmudaim, went into Yerushalayim, and they abused all the women in Yerushalayim, and this is what it means in Eicha, Nashim b'tzion inu, Bisula Isvarei Yehuda, Nashim b'tzion inu, Bisula Isvarei Yehuda. So the Tarmudaim by Bayis Rishon, they didn't take not the silver, not the gold, not the copper, not the cash. They abused the Nashim. And therefore again, this man the Amar holds, Oivek Acham Habal Bas Yisrael Havlad Mamzer. So it's very interesting. Think about it. When could you light the menorah? Until the Tarmudaim are out of the marketplace. Which according to Rashi, which the Gra sides with, means when the Tarmudim, who are basically, according to Rabbi Yochanan, Mamzerim. Why are they Mamzerim? Either they're descendants of Shlomo's Avadim who lived with Jewish women, or they're the descendants of the Tarmudim who abused the Nashim Yishalayim, who are Mamzerim. When the Mamzerim leave the marketplace, you could light the menorah. A rather odd barometer. You know, when could you light the menorah? Look outside. If you see any mamzerim, you could still light the menorah. Oh, you don't see any mamzerim? No, you can't light the menorah anymore. That's strange.
That's not the reason.
Yanko, can we light the menorah? No, I think I still see a mamzer outside. We can light the menorah.
As long as they're around.
Tati, I see a mamzer. We can still light the menorah. Oh, okay, good.
What is the sign of a mamzer? How can you know? How can you tell?
Oh, how can you tell if someone's a mamzer? I'm happy you asked. Okay, so
It says on the forehead.
As long as the Tarmudaim are around, that means
the Gemara says further. The Gemara in Yevamos. Let's go to number 13 for a moment. Yeah. The Gemara says, Yosef Rabbi Yosef Achard Rav Kahana v'Yosef Rav Kahana Kamed Rabbi Yehuda v'Yosef Ka'amar Asidin Yisrael Da'avdi Yom Tova Ki Charvi Tarmud. That when Tarmud is destroyed, we're going to make a Yom Tov. There's going to be a day on the calendar, we're going to eat very greasy food, and people are going to ask, what are we doing? Tarmud is destroyed. Why? Why are we so happy? So Gemara asks, they're already destroyed. Nah. Talmud is destroyed, not Tarmud. Rav Ashi says it's the same thing. You think they're destroyed, but they're constantly regenerating themselves. When one half is destroyed, the other half of the mountain builds up. When this half of the mountain is destroyed, they build up on the other side. Okay. The Gemara tells a story. Rav Hamnuna was sitting before Ula, and Rav Hamnuna was saying a good kasha. Ula said, you're a good rabbi. You're a really good guy. It's a shame you're like a mamzer. It's really a shame. You would have been something one day. It's a shame that you come from the city of Harpanya, because the city of Harpanya has very questionable lineage. So Rav Hamnuna got embarrassed. Now when Ula saw Rav Hamnuna got embarrassed, he realized that Rav Hamnuna wasn't a mamzer. Why? Because one of the simonim of mamzeros is to be to be bold and brazen. But if he saw he had baishanos, that was a simon he had good lineage. So he said, no. You must be a kosher yid. Who do you pay taxes to? What city do you pay? He said, I pay taxes in Palmyra. So that means you live in Palmyra. You don't live in Harpanya. So you're a kosher yid. So Gemara says like this. What's Harpanya? Harpanya is the place when somebody of bad, irrepute lineage has a hard time getting a shidduch, you go there, and meaning it's somebody who doesn't have pure lineage, goes there to get married, because that's a city where people have impure lineage. Says the Braisa, anyone who doesn't know what family they're from, what shevet they're from, you go there to get a wife. Says Rava, Harpanya is worse than Gehenna. Harpanya is more invidious and more poisonous than Gehenna. You're better off being in Gehenna than in Harpanya. Why? Because Gehenna you could get out of. Let's say somebody goes to Gehenna and they turn on the oven, not on 350, not on 450, on like self-clean, right? And they put it on for, let's say, 3 hours. At the end of the day, you're toast, but you come out. Harpanya, if you're messed up in Harpanya, you're ma'uva shena yochaliskan. Someone who's a mamzer, there's no way out. There's no way to cleanse oneself. It's worse to be in Harpanya than to be in Gehenna. Says the Gemara, where do the mamzerim of Harpanya come from? Mishon. If you remember in Asar Yochsin and Kedushin, Mishon was like a city of mamzerim. And where do the mamzerim Mishon come from? Tarmud. And where do the mamzerim of Tarmud come from? The Avdei Shloimeh. So if you want to know, what is the source of all mamzeros in the world? Tarmud. The Tarmudam. The guy who sells you, for your fireplace. You know, when you go to the store and you buy wood for the fireplace, that guy, the Tarmudi, he's worse than Gehenna. Because he is the source of all mamzeros in the world. It goes from the Avdei Shloimeh to Tarmud, to Meishon, to Harpanya. Says the Gemara, if you want to know how low it goes, it's Gehenna, and then Tarmud is low. In other words, thank you. If you want to know how low something is, as low as Gehenna is, Tarmud is even lower. So that's why we're not Makabel Gerim from Tarmud, because they're Malay Yidden who are of irrepute, their lineage is tainted. Interesting. And who teaches us all of this? Who's the one who says we're not Makabel Gerim from Tarmud? Rabbi Yochanan. The Baal HaMemra. Then when do you light the menorah? Ad shetichla ragla de Tarmudai. Rabbi Yochanan says take out your binoculars. As long as you still see a couple of good, nice mamzerim, you can light the menorah. But you can light that menorah until the foot of the Tarmudi is gone. Wow. Says the Medrash Neicha Rabbah. Omar Rabbi Yochanan! Ashrei mi shera b'mapalta shel Tarmud. Fortunate is he who sees the downfall of Tarmud. Why? Because they were the ones who were implicit in both destructions of the Beit Mikdash, Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. Bayis Rishon they supplied 80,000 archers. Bayis Sheni they supplied 8,000 archers. So we always say Bayis Rishon the Babylonians, Bayis Sheni the Romans. But we forget to mention the ones who destroyed everything. Who are they? The Tarmudim. Where do they live? There's a city in Syria, Palmyra. Therefore, ISIS, when they come and they want to wipe out a city, where's the first place they go? Palmyra. Why? Because the Gula has to happen. It's a Yom Tif. When that city is destroyed, I don't care who destroys it. It could be your arch enemy. It's a Yom Tif. Ashrei mi shera. You see, for hundreds of years, nobody was able to experience the Ashrei mi shera b'mapalta shel Tarmud. Now the truth is, Rabbi Yochanan himself saw it. Because Rabbi Yochanan was nifter. I read this and my friend from France sent this to me today, Rabbi Rafal. Palmyra fell in the year 272. Rabbi Yochanan died in 279, 7 years later. So Rabbi Yochanan Taka saw the fall of Palmyra, but so did we. Look it up. The ISIS came in there. They destroyed all the arches, all the ancient ruins. What do they have with that city? What do they care about that city? The answer is because they held like Rabbi Yochanan. Ashrei mi shera b'mapalta shel Tarmud. By the way, the Bereshis Rabbah says the same thing. V'yiresh zaracha yishar soinav. Listen to this. Lavan and Besuel, they tell Rivka, they tell Rivkala, your children will inherit the gate of your enemy. Who's that? Tarmud. Ashrav kamishu roi b'mapalta shel Tarmud. Can you imagine Lavan and Besuel tell Rivka, I give you a bracha. Here they have their little sister, their little daughter. They're sending her away. They could have given her every bracha in the world. They basically said, we give you a bracha that you should see the downfall of Palmyra. It's an amazing thing. By the way, there's a Medrash Zuta in Shiurim that says that La'asid Lavai, when Mashiach comes, one of the nations that we're going to destroy is, of course, Palmyra. Now, Tarmud. It's interesting. They seem to have some lasting even in the times of the Amoram. So the Gemara in Ksubis discusses a character by the name of Ben Netzar. Remember this guy, Ben Netzar? No, not related to anyone in Lawrence. What? No, not related to your brother-in-law. Okay? The Gemara says, basically, what if somebody's wife is kidnapped by Goyim? Do you try to free her? Again, this is not halacha l'maisa. It's a Gemara over here. No. Somebody's wife is kidnapped, and do you try to free her? The question is, if she was violated by a captor, then we have to figure out, did she do it ba'oinus? Did she do it b'ratzain? And if she did ba'oinus, so she's still muteres, so then you got to free her. If she did b'ratzain, she's usher to you anyway, you don't free her. So the Gemara says, it depends. It depends who captured her. It depends if Achashverosh captured her, or if Ben Netzar captured her. If Achashverosh captured her, he's not taking her as a wife. So then, if she did it ba'oinus, so she's not usher, so you redeem her. But if Ben Netzar captured her, he's going to take her as a wife. So she's going to do it b'ratzain. You know, b'ratzain, she's usher to you, so you don't free her. Who in the world is Ben Netzar? Ben Netzar is the king of the Talmudim. Okay? He's the king of the Talmudim. In fact, Bereshis Rabbah writes, Hafla v'fela, that when Yaakov Avinu was encountering Esav, and Yaakov davened, Hatzileni na miyad ochi miyad Esav, Yaakov looks into the future, and he sees a chveis, he sees Haman, right? Like Baal Turim says, Hatzileni na miyad is Rosh Tevas Haman. He sees Hitler, he sees Crusaders, he sees Inquisition, he sees all Jewish tragedy. Who does he have in mind when he prays Hatzileni na miyad ochi miyad Esav? Says Bereshis Rabbah, he has in mind the Talmudim. Because these guys turned on us. They were Yidden, Jewish women who married Shlomo's Avodim, or they were women who were violated by the Talmudim, and they moved to northern Syria, and they became Mamzerim. And when the Bayis Rishon, they supplied 80,000 soldiers to destroy the first Beis HaMikdash. Bayis Sheni, they supplied 8,000 soldiers to destroy the second Beis HaMikdash. They violated Jewish women times of Bayis Rishon. They are the worst of the worst of the worst. They are the chitzonim of the chitzonim, the pchisus of the pchisus. There's no one lower, worse, more wicked than the Talmudim. And therefore, when Rome falls, there's no Yom Tif. When Persia falls, there's no Yom Tif. When Greece falls, there's no Yom Tif. But Ashrei mi shara b'mapalta shel Tarmoid. That's the slogan of ISIS. Says Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yosef, Asidin Yisrael da'aviyoyma tava ki charvi Tarmoid. And therefore it's suggested, there's a commentary on the Psikta of Rav Kahana called Zara Yishai, that this is the deeper kavana, that we light the menorah. What does Hanukkah mean? There are many Perushim in Chanukah. Chanukah, they rested on the 25th. But Rabbeinu Bechai writes in the Karakemach, the word Hanukkah means inauguration. What are we inaugurating? We're inaugurating the future redemption, the Geula Shlema. We're inaugurating the Yimos HaMashiach. So Hanukkah is a time that we yearn for the redemption, we yearn for the downfall of all the Jewish enemies. The quintessential Jewish enemy. The enemy worse than the worst. The ones that turned on us. The ones that were Tamar. The ones that are responsible for Churban Bayis Rishon. Churban Bayis Sheni are the Talmudim. Says Rabbi Yochanan, the expert on Talmud. The one who said that Ashri Mishra B'Mapalta Shel Talmud. The one who said Ein Makablim Geira Meya Talmudim. He says, you know when we're going to light the menorah? Until Ad Dekalya Rigla de Tarmudai. We're going to light the menorah until we see the downfall of the great enemy of the Jewish people, the Talmudim. That's a deeper kavanah of the Shiur of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah, that we light the menorah Ad Dekalya Rigla de Tarmudai. And who said over this halacha in the name of Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Bar Chana. And what is Rabbi Bar Chana? He's the other expert on the Talmudim. He's the one who said 18,000 of them came into Shalayim and violated Nashim, B'tzion, Inu, B'sulais, Ba'arei Yehuda. So this is the deeper meaning. If you look at number 20 in the end, he says that Lekach b'Chanukah shaya'oz hisnoitzitzos ha'geula v'cheinu b'chol shana v'shana anu mespalilim ba'isay hazman. We pray during that time ala gulo asida, and they give a siman ad dekalya ragla de Tarmudai. that we should be zoicha to see the downfall of the Rishonim. We should see kala raglam in hashuk. They should have no memory. Ashrei mi sharabim apalosin shel tarma. I would like to add another idea, somewhat remotely based on something I saw in Reb Tzadok HaKohen, and that is, what does Talmud represent? Psulei yichos. Right? We said that the most impure city in the world is what? Harpanya. They come from where? Mieshon. They come from Talmud. Talmud is the source of all mamzeros. The Gemara in Kedushin says on Ayin Amud Beis, Ein hashchina shayra ella ala miyuchas shel Yisrael. The Shechina resides only on someone of pure lineage. By the way, there's a Tosfos in Masechta Tainis. Tosfos asks, it says that Kalev ben Yefuna said, anyone who destroys the city of Kiryat Sefer, I'm going to give them Achsa, my daughter, as a wife. So Gemara asks, maybe it would be a cripple, maybe it would be a Balmum. So the Marsha asks, maybe it will be a mamzer. Why are we worried about a Balmum? Why maybe it will be a mamzer? So Marsha says, how would you conquer the city of Beit Sefer? That means to remind us of the 3,000 halachas that were forgotten during the Avelos of Moshe. It doesn't mean the city of Beit Sefer. It means to restore those 3,000 halachas. How are you going to restore it? B'Ruach HaKodesh. If you're a mamzer, you cannot have Ruach HaKodesh, because Ein Hashchina Shoira Ela Miyuchasa Shel Yisrael. There's a concept that to have Hashras Hashchina, you need to have pure lineage. Like before Kabbalas HaTorah, Hashem told the Goyim, open up Sefer Yichseim. In order to connect with God, there's a purity of lineage that is required to have Hashras Hashchina. Chanukah, when we light the Ner Chanukah, we are symbolizing the return of the Shechina to Klal Yisrael. After all, we know that a miracle occurred in the Ner Ma'aravi, that the Ner Ma'aravi never extinguished, and the Gemara says that was Eidos, that the Shechina was Shoira in Klal Yisrael. But even before the miracle of Hanukkah, the Ner Ma'aravi started to go out a little bit. And Klal Yisrael felt the Shechina was not Shoira on them. So Hashem made a miracle in the menorah to demonstrate the Shechina had returned. Hanukkah, we symbolize the Shechina is with us. But the Shechina is among the purebred. The Miuchasai Shabisra. Miuchasai means someone of pure lineage. Therefore, the siman of lighting the menorah is that the Kalya Rigla Tarmudai. Regel could also represent the source. In other words, the makoim of creation of somebody. Adekalia Rigla de Tarmudai. We light the menorah so long as the Tarmudim have been vanished. The impure lineage is vanished from Klal Yisrael. That allows the Shechina to be Shayra in Klal Yisrael.
So, how come you say that Mamzer, Talmid Chacham, is higher than Kohen Gadol and Haaretz?
That's true. I guess in pure knowledge of Torah. But Baruch HaKodesh, it sounds like you can't have Baruch HaKodesh. It's not a punishment, it's a reality. Ein hashchina shayra el michasa shel Yisrael. So you're right. The Gemara says like that, right? The Gemara says that Mamzer Talmid Chacham is greater than Kohen Gadol Am Haaretz. But Kohen Gadol Talmid Chacham is better than Mamzer Talmid Chacham, right? So it's a Maila. There's a certain Maila of Hashras Hashchina. Maybe there are ways to compensate for it. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, Talmud Torah is greater than Hashras Hashchina. But Chanukah specifically symbolizes the return of the Shechina, and therefore we symbolize that by the vanishing of the Kalya Rigla de Tarmudai. One last thought, Rabbi Say. The Shem Yishmael writes that again, the Tarmudim represent the worst of the Jewish enemies. They're responsible for the destruction of Bayis Rishon, responsible for Churban Bayis Sheni. Ashrei mi sharabim ma'palasin shel Tarmudim. And we're going to make a Yom Tif when Talmud represents the Chisus of Klal Yisrael, the lowest of Klal Yisrael. The Regel is also the lowest part of the body. The symbolism of Adikalia Rigla de Tarmudai, that the light of the menorah is able even to reach the darkest of the dark, the lowest of the low. even someone who is on the madrega of the Tarmudai, who is the chitzonim, even someone on the madrega of the regel, which is the outermost part, the lowest part of the human being, the Ner Chanukah is able to illuminate even to these dark places. But the Talmudim, amazingly, is quoted in one other Gemara in Shas. Remember the guy? It's like Erev Shabbos at 3:59, and Hillel gets his third phone call of the day, right? First he wanted to know why a certain nationality has very flat feet. And then he says, I have another very important question. Why are the eyes of the Talmudim either slanted? That's how most people learn it, but that's probably not what it means. Why are their eyes clouded? Yeah, remember this Gemara? Take a look at number 24. Halach v'himtin sha'achas chazav yamar mikan Hillel. Nesate v'yatza l'krasa. Hillel gets dressed again. He was in the shower. He pulls him out of the shower. Amar lo b'ni ma'ata mevakesh. He says, Hillel, I know it's 4 o'clock, and I know Mincha's in 7.5 minutes. But I have a very important question. Why do Talmudim have slanty eyes? Why do they have clouded eyes? So Hillel says, a gavaldige kasha, because they live among the sand. So one thing we know about the Talmudim, they live in a desert oasis. So the sand is always blowing in their eyes. So God made them with slanty eyes or with clouded eyes. They can't see anything. The Kazhnut Samagid writes, the nationality of Tarmudai represents those who are not able to see because of the physicality of this world. He says sand, sand will never clump together. It always remains separate granules and separate particles. They live in the world of pirud. They live in the world of separation, in the Rishus Harabim. They are people who cannot see the reality and the truth of this world. And in a way, that's a lot of us. This world is an olam hasheker, olam hachoshech. Our eyes are clouded. The way we see reality is not the way it is. We have a warped sense of reality. The Ner Chanukah is able to illuminate, even for those on the madrega, the Tarmudaim, who are not able to see clearly, whose vision is clouded, who don't have a true and genuine perception of reality. So we light the menorah until we're able to vanish that type of illusion of the way we look at the world as fantasy. Where we light the menorah to gain a clarity, adekalia rigla de Tarmudai, until that type of facade and that type of veneer is removed before our eyes, and we're able to gain a certain clarity. But one thing we know for sure, if Chazal specifically hone in on this nationality, Tarmudai, there's certainly a very strong connection between Ner Chanukah and the fall of the Tarmudaim. And we know, the Gemara tells us, Ashrei mi shara b'mapalasan shel Tarmudai. So we should be zoicha. We saw it in our time. In the last 5 years, we saw the obliteration of Palmyra. We saw it. Is that what the Gemara means? We don't know exactly what the Gemara means. But somehow, by lighting the Ner of Chanukah, we're able to destroy all the Sinai Yisrael. Interesting, we once said, Chanukah is 8 days. I don't know if you ever heard the kasha. You ever hear this kasha? Why is Chanukah 8 days? But the miracle is only 7 days, right? The Beis Yosef's kasha. You probably never heard that kasha. So a new answer to the kasha is that Chanukah, as we said, is the inauguration of the third Beis Hamikdash. We've been in how many Golosim in our history? 4. But Rashi and Zechariah says, Lamatzech al Hashminis, each Golos has a dual part. Bavel Kazdi, Paras Madai, Yavan Moikdan, Roimi Yishmael, 8 Golosim. Chanukah, which is inaugurating the Yemais HaMashiach, each day of Chanukah is Moitzias from one of the 8 Golosim. That's why we have 8 days of Chanukah. And each day we're going to light that menorah. Not only until we get out of all 8 Golosim, but until we even get out of the Golos of the Tarmudai, the worst of the worst of the worst. That's why on Purim, you don't sing about the downfall of the Yevanim, you don't sing about the downfall of the Babylonians. On Chanukah, you sing a pismine about the downfall of Yavan, of Madai, of Bavel, of Roimi. We talk about all because Chanukah inaugurates the Golos, the final Geula out of all 8 Golosim. Shvizaycha to Ashrei mi shara b'man palasan shel Tarmudai. Wishing everyone a freilich and Chanukah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.